Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to look at studying quadratic functions. If you've completed the previous video, grade 10 factoring and grade 11 factoring ax squared plus bx plus c, we're going to be using that today, so it'll be a lot easier if you've completed that. So let's look at our function here. F of x equals x squared. And so we have our table right here. So 3 squared is 9, negative 2 squared is 4, negative 1 squared is 1, etc., etc. And then when we graph it, it gives us this shape, right? 0 squared, 1 squared 1, 2 squared 4, 3 squared 9. And we call this shape a parabola. So here's our general form, fx equals ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, c are real numbers. And here we have a not being 0, because if it is, then we're studying a linear function. But we're going to study quadratic functions, so a is not 0. If a is greater than 0, then the form of the parabola will be what's called opens upward. And if a is less than 0, then we have open downward. Okay, next is intercepts. So the y-intercept is right here. When we cross the y-axis here like that, x is equal to 0. So that's our y-intercept. And then we have these two x-intercepts like that, and these occur when the y value is equal to 0. And so quadratic functions can have no x-intercept, one x-intercept, or two, but they will always have one y-intercept. So here we have no x-intercept, here we have one x-intercept, and here we have two x-intercepts. Okay, the next concept is vertex. So vertex is the end of the parabola here, where it's the maximum or minimum value. In this case, the vertex is 1, 2, this point right there, that's our vertex. And we notice that it is a maximum. Okay, here we have another graph right here, and the vertex, as you see, it's at -1, 0, and it is a minimum. Okay, next concept is called axis of symmetry. So the line that goes through the middle of the parabola, that's called an axis of symmetry. And notice that it has the same x value as our vertex, right? So you find the vertex x value, and that is where the axis of symmetry is. Okay, domain and range. So f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c has no restrictions for the x value. You can plug in any value you want and it does not create a problem. So the domain is all real numbers. So here we have a graph here. Domain is all real numbers, right? What are the values you can plug in? That's for domain. And it's anything. You can plug in any x value and there's no problem. Range is what are the y values that get hit, and so we see here that all of these y values get hit like that, and so y greater or equal to -1 is our range. Okay, here's another example. We have a graph here. Domain, all real numbers. Range, y less or equal to 2, right? See, we're at 2 here. Less or equal to 2 is our range. Okay, so let's do some practice. Determine the following. Opens which way, intercepts, vertex, axis of symmetry, domain, and range. And we're going to get that from the graph. So here we see that it opens downward like that. X-intercepts -2 and 0. Y-intercept, when does it cross the y-axis? It's y equals 0. Vertex -1, 1 like that, and we notice that it is a maximum. The axis of symmetry is the same x value as the vertex, so it's x equals -1. Domain, all real numbers, and range, y less or equal to 1, like that. Okay, B, another practice. We notice that it opens upward like that. No x-intercepts. It does not cross the x-axis at all. Y-intercept is y equals 4. Vertex right here, the tip, so that's 2, 2 is our vertex. We notice that it is a minimum. X equals 2 is the axis of symmetry. Domain, all real numbers. Range, all y values greater or equal to 2, like that. Okay, time for some practice. Determine the following. Same question. Opens which way, intercepts vertex, axis of symmetry, domain, range, like that, for I and double I, 1 and 2. So go ahead and pause the video and answer that question. Okay, so we're back. What do we have? Opens upwards, x intercepts -3 and -1. Y-intercept is y equals 3. Vertex -2, -1, like that. Axis of symmetry, x equals -2. Domain, all real numbers, and range, y greater or equal to -1. Okay, double I. See that it opens downward like that. X-intercepts is x equals 0. Y-intercept is y equals 0. Vertex is at 0, 0. Axis of symmetry, x equals 0. Domain, all real numbers, and range, less or equal to 0. Okay, so we practice getting characteristics or concepts from a graph. Now we're going to practice getting it only from a function. So here, determine the following. Opens which way, and what are the intercepts? So 1, 2, 3, 4 questions that we're going to do together. So here's our first function, x squared plus x minus 6. We notice that a is greater than 0, so it opens upward. Y-intercept occurs when x equals to 0, so we plug in x equals 0 and we get y equals -6. So that is the y-intercept. X-intercepts, so it's not obvious from general form. So we look at this general form, right here, general form, and the x-intercepts do not stick out. You cannot see the x-intercepts very easily. So what we're going to do is we call factor, right? So we saw factoring, so we rewrite it here, x squared plus x minus 6. Just a reminder, right, how we do it. We have product -6, sum of 1. Two numbers that multiply to -6, so 3 and -2. They add up to 1, so these are our two numbers. So x squared plus x minus 6 equals x plus 3 times x minus 2. And so if you had troubles following what I just did, please be sure to watch my factor videos in grade 10 and grade 11. Okay, so here we have it factored. So for the x-intercepts, y is 0. So our function equals 0. So you can either have x equals -3, right? If you plug in -3, you get 0 times something, which gives 0, so that's good. Or x equals 2, right? 2 minus 2 is 0, and then this whole thing goes to 0. So these are the two x-intercepts, -3 and 2. Okay, next, double I. X squared minus 6x plus 8. We notice that a is greater than 0, so it opens upwards. Y-intercept, this occurs when x is equal to 0, so we plug that in and we get y equals 8. So that's our y-intercept. X-intercept, we're going to factor, so product is 8, sum -6. Two numbers are -2 and -4, so these are the two numbers we use. Because a equals 1, that's how we use it. So x minus 2 times x minus 4, like that. So x-intercept y is equal to 0, so this function equals to 0. So how do you get that? Either x equals 2 or x equals 4, and so these are the x-intercepts. All right, what do you plug in to get 0? 2 and 4. Okay, number 3, h of x equals -x squared minus 2. We notice that a is less than 0, therefore it opens downward, right? So downward like this. Y-intercept occurs when x equals to 0. Plug that in, we get y equals -2. X-intercept, y equals 0. So we plug in the function equals 0 like that. And so we notice we get -x squared equals 2. X squared equals -2. And so this has no real solution, right? If you square root both sides, you square root a negative. You can't have that. So there are no x-intercepts. Okay, number 4. So we have 6x squared plus x minus 2. We notice that a is greater than 0, so it opens upwards. Y-intercept occurs when x equals 0, so we plug that in, we get y equals -2 as our y-intercept. X-intercepts occur when y equals 0, so our function equals 0 like that. And so what we're going to do is factor it. Here a is not 1, a is 6. And so there's a different method for factoring compared to the others that we saw. So product -12, sum is 1. Two numbers are -3 and 4. They add up to 1 and they multiply to -12. So those are our numbers. And so reminder, this x becomes -3x plus 4x like that. First group plus second group. Factor from the first group 3x. What's left is 2x minus 1. Factor from the second group is 2. What's left is 2x minus 1. Factor in common is 2x minus 1 from both. So we factor that out. What remains is 3x plus 2 like that. So here we have our 6x squared plus x minus 2 is the same as 2x minus 1 times 3x plus 2 like that. And so how do we get this function to be 0? Either this part is 0 or this part is 0. So if the first part is 0, we get x equals a half. If the second part is 0, we get x equal -2/3. And so these are our x-intercepts, 1/2 and -2/3. If you had trouble factoring this, be sure to watch my grade 11 factoring video, and we have lots of practice so that you'll be able to do what I just did very easily. Okay, practice number 2, determine the following. So opens which way and what are the intercepts for these functions? Go ahead and pause the video and answer that. Okay, we're back. So function is x squared minus 4x minus 5. A is greater than 0, so it opens upwards, so it's like that. Y-intercept occurs when x is 0. We plug that in, we get y equals -5. X-intercept, this occurs when y equals to 0, so we have function equal to 0 like that. We're going to factor product -5, sum -4. Two numbers are 1 and -5. Product gives -5, sum gives -4 like that. So we take those two numbers and use them. So x plus 1 times x minus 5 like that. And so what do we plug in to get 0? We plug in -1 to get 0, and we plug in 5 to get 0. So those are our x-intercepts. Okay, double I. So g of x equals -x squared plus 2x plus 8. So we have a less than 0, meaning it opens downward. Y-intercept occurs when x equals 0. So we plug in x equals 0, we get 8. So y-intercept is 8. X-intercept occurs when y equals 0. So we have -x squared plus 2x plus 8 equals 0. We're going to go times -1 on both sides. So we get x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0 like that. Product -8, sum -2. The two numbers are -4 and 2. Those are the numbers we use. So x minus 4 times x plus 2. What are the values that we plug in to get 0? 4 and -2. So those are the x-intercepts. Okay, 3. h of x, x squared plus 6x plus 9. And so we have a greater than 0, so it opens upward. Y-intercept occurs when x is 0. So we plug x to 0, we get y equals 9 as our y-intercept. X-intercept occurs when y equals 0. So our function equals to 0. We're going to factor. So product is 9, sum is 6. Numbers are 3 and 3. And so this function can be rewritten as x plus 3 times x plus 3. So what do we plug in to get 0? -3. So x-intercept is x equals -3. Okay, j of x, 8x squared plus 14x minus 15. So a is greater than 0, opens upward. Y-intercept occurs when x equals 0. Plug that in, we get -15 as our y-intercept. X-intercept occurs when y equals 0. So our function equals 0 like that. We're going to do a factor right now, factorization. So product -120, sum 14. Two numbers that do that is 20 and -6. Multiply -120, add up 14, so that's great. So we don't use those numbers right away to give us our numbers over here. So what we do is we separate 14x to be 20x minus 6 like that. So we didn't change anything. First group plus second group. Be careful of the negative here. It's part of the 6, so it's plus negative 6x minus 15. First group, factor out 4x. What's left is 2x plus 5. Second group, factor out negative 3. What's left is 2x plus 5. 2x plus 5 is in common for each group here, so we're going to factor that out. What's left is 4x minus 3 as such. So our function is equal to 2x plus 5 times 4x minus 3. To get 0, either this part is 0 or this part is 0. So we write that down like this. Gives us x equals negative 5 over 2. And this one gives us x equals 3 over 4. And so those are the x-intercepts that you plug in to get 0. Negative 5 over 2 and 3 over 4. And that's it. It's that easy. I'll see you guys in the next video.